Hi. So this week I thought we'd do some gesture work, some figure sketches, mainly because that's all I've really been doing this week. So I'm relatively well practiced, although I've been in a bit of a lull. I don't know if it's the weather. The weather's terrible in the UK at the minute. So yeah, I've not really been feeling too excited or energized to do anything other than what I typically do, which is, like I say, figure work. So this video will be very much a instructional adjacent video. It's not necessarily me telling you this is what you should do, but more how I do it and what I tend to look for and my approach. So I've managed to download some images from Upsplash, I think they're called, because it's royalty free. Not the best lineup of images, but they'll do for the sake of this video. So typically when it comes to drawing anything, I'd start at the top and work my way down. Because it's freehand drawing with ink, typically what I do. I tend to work from left to right, so then I'm not smudging things. Obviously, if you're working with a pencil, go ham wild, do whatever you want, whatever feels right. This is just, again, the way that I tend to approach it. Now, I'm going to treat these as if they're like minute sketches. Obviously, they're not timed, but the level of detail I tend to go for. So, like I say, start at the top of the head and think about the proportions of things. And go. This is the first drawing of the day, as is always the case with these videos. So again, we're not looking for perfection. We're looking for getting started with something. So we're blocking the head, and then I'm looking for lines that overlap and lines of movement. So maybe you can see there's this fold, so it's thinking about how the lines overlap. So there's that, and then there's a line underneath. So I'd quickly get that down. Same with this. If I was doing pencil, I might be tempted to just block out the image like this. Treat it as a rectangle or something like that. So you can see something like that. But like I say, I don't tend to draw like that. I think a little bit like that. But I don't typically draw with that in mind. I tend to draw with perspective in mind. So obviously this is, if there was a rug, it'd be a little bit like that. I hope this is all making sense. I'm not a teacher. I don't claim to be a teacher. I find it quite hard to put forward what it is that I do, because a lot of it is instinctual. So we'll do this quickly, and then I might do it again, because it's not a bad thing to redo things a few times. But yeah, other things I tend to look for. So the fact that the back of the head lines up with the back of this shoe, you can also see that this line, which is probably a very on purpose compositional thing, goes like that and feeds through the hands to the other hands through the head, and it gives, you know, there's some parallel lines. I'm always looking for parallel lines, is what I'm waffling on about. But when it comes to freehand drawing, because you don't necessarily, I mean, this is very rushed and not very good really, but when it comes to that sort of thing, they're the kinds of things I'm looking for. if I was to take my time a little bit more. So we'll do that again because that's rubbish. But this is more of an instructional video. I'm not aiming for something good. It's difficult with these videos. I'm still finding my voice. I'm still trying to figure out what the hell I'm doing with them. So I would really appreciate questions that I can answer, because and feedback in a sense, just to even just comments, just saying, oh, that works, that doesn't work. That'd be really handy, because again, it's not so much that I want to create tutorials, but I want to be helpful in a sense, and I want to try and find the best way to put across what it is that I've learned over the past few years. But a lot of it is instinctual, unfortunately. So yeah, we'll go again. We'll try a different approach. Maybe we'll go left to right. Maybe we'll try and be a little bit more considerate. This is just a Parker Biro type thing. It's not a pen that I'd use too often, so there's a little bit of that going on. But if anything, I'm kind of happy to make mistakes, have them be out there, and make you realise that everybody makes them, especially artists. Like, art in essence is just a series of making mistakes. I've come to find, more so than most other things. Going a very continuous line here. But yeah, there's a natural flow to this arm, something akin to that. So I'm looking at that, I'm thinking of that. It is difficult when clothes are involved. Not that life drawing is much easier when it's not, but so there's volume, something else I tried to look for. Hopefully this is all coming across in focus. So there's volume to his chest. There's a roundness there. So it's thinking about that. And of course, if you're drawing with pencil, feel free to rub things out, do things lightly. You know, you've got to find your own way of doing it. I like line work when it's done in pen. I like working with pen. And if you don't like something, or you don't feel like you've done it very well, you can always redraw it. You don't have to create masterpieces. I try and view everything as a learning opportunity, not necessarily as a way to inflate my ego, do something great. So there's a curve. You could just draw it straight, but there's a subtle curve, and I'm always looking for things like that. And that helps things look a bit more 3D. Again, in a rushed little sketch like this, it's not, maybe won't come across, but just trying to illustrate what I'm thinking more than with words, more than the drawing, I suppose. So I've got a little bit too wide. Again, it doesn't have to be totally accurate. I'm still trying to treat this as if it's a quick sketch, so there's always going to be inaccuracies, but just little things I'm looking for. So again, there's this lovely little curve going on. The belt has a little curve. Yada yada yada. I'm going to struggle to do the face any good with this. I've gone a little bit too small, and then points a little bit too wide. Something I'm always doing. I do draw quite small. So where are we at? So that goes like that, wide, wide, wide. It's a subtle curve. And again, this has a rounded volume. And then that pushes into this fold. So we try and do something like that. Bring your leg out a little bit more. This wants to be a bit more over here. Zipper. Again, taking note of these kinds of little details. So yeah, again, this isn't by any means a great drawing. I might try a different pose. But hopefully you get some sense of what goes through my head when I'm doing this sort of thing. And I feel like it's not revolutionary by any stretch of the means. I feel like there's probably people saying very similar things with a lot more articulate. Hello again. Vinnie's come to say hello. It's that part of the video. It seems to be a weekly thing. You okay? Yeah, good. Right. She's botted off now. So we'll do this one. I feel like this because the other ones are all a bit flat, especially these. That one's not bad. But this one feels the most different, so we'll do that one quickly. And I'm just doing something. Honestly, she's not as chatty until I start recording things. Right, so something I tend to do before doing anything. Zoom in. Look for the general shape of things. She's just scratching the carpet, that's what that noise is. You see, I'd shut her out, but that feels a bit wrong. And I'm sure you don't mind. So, yeah, blocking things into simple shapes, trying to see the general shape of it, so you could easily fit that into a rectangle. Certain elements are quite square and blocky. There's an obvious perspective shift going on. So if you were to, tell you what, we'll just do like quick things. So under a neck, around the chest, feels very straight, has a roundedness. The arm, straight with a round, that has volume. Where the armpit, you know, that has like a depression, I suppose. Don't we all? Head, again, quite square, quite rectangular, especially with that headband on. And don't be afraid to have a bit of a run up with your lines as well. If you know you've got, you know, you want it to be expressive, you want it to be. I like it when there's little moments of detail and accuracy and realism and niceness and crispness against something that's more, you know, obviously sketched. Has a little bit of a history to it. Cheeks, cheekbones, under the chin. So with this arm, again, I'm looking at it and seeing that it's, you see, a lot of people do cylinders for arms, which is useful to a point to see the general shape. But her arm it's multi-layered, it's got a, I try and think of things as like bean sacks, I suppose. And my anatomy isn't great, so again, this is just my interpretation of things. And then I'm trying to figure out an angle, so there's an obvious angle like that. So I usually do things like this mentally, but if we do them so I can, it's not quite it, it goes like that. So I think of things like that, and go straight up the curve of the calf, thigh. Typically I'll just round a shape off by just adding a little bit of noise, so it's not strictly anything. And then if you look, there's not a lot of information between the head, chest and thigh. So you want to, it's just making little observations, I suppose. It's knowing that there's a lot of foreshortening going on. That knee could be a little bit closer up there. Get messy, make mistakes. Especially for your first couple of pages. Like I said, this is first page of the day. And then there's like a roundedness, like that. So, again, by no means perfect, but hopefully, even though it's messy and not great, it's enough to give you an idea of what I'm thinking. Now, typically I do go into things and I'm a little bit more precious. These are more like gesture sketches, I suppose. I'll try and do this. Mind you, it's a little bit little, isn't it? We'll try and do that one. I'm typically not very good at these sorts of poses, with what little room's left on the page. Right, so I typically start with the head. Then see the hairline, curve of the brow. I try and leave the face as without too much detail, especially when it's as small as this. I get bogged down in details, especially where the face is concerned. And again, don't be afraid to make mistakes. I've done nothing but mistakes in this video, I feel like, but I want it to be honest, you know. So there's also something to be said for just blocking out shapes and treating them as flat. I do that quite often, like with this top, the sleeve of the top. It doesn't have to follow things exactly how they are in a reference. That's not really the point of a reference, I don't think, personally. I think you are supposed to have a bit of fun with it, and you can only learn things so much through doing one drawing. You have to do multiple of everything. all the time, and over time you will have these little epiphanies. But you can't get everything right in just one little sketch, I don't think. When you're drawing like this, if you're doing with pencil, you know, and you're properly mapping things out and all of that sort of thing, sure, but with freehand drawing like this, it's often a bit of a crapshoot. So, but yeah, laid poses aren't really my thing, which is kind of why I've picked them. Get better at them. So again, it's just trying to like line things up. So roughly head lines up with her thigh. Then the back of this arm, which probably should have a bit more depth and be a bit further down there. Lines up roughly with the foot. Things like negative space as well. So in essence, you could draw what isn't there. Get the basic shape. I know there's other people who will probably say you block everything in, you know, you follow centre lines and all of this sort of thing. Which you should, you know, if that's what you want to do. But again, this is not me throwing shade on anything. So, overall, plenty to work on. But again, first drawing of the day, first page of the day. And from this, then you can look and go, right, well, what's right, what's wrong? This arm could be a bit further up. Space between the neck and the arm. And you get critical, but you get you're kind as well, you know. There's certainly things that worked, but I think if I drew it a little bit bigger, you know, blah, blah, blah. And they're all different things that you have to try and adapt and work on yourself. But the idea is, that I'm trying to put across is just starting, trying to be observant, looking for general shapes. Also trying to like almost feel the pose, which sounds really weird. But like with the armpit or the knee, the twist of the arm, you know, you kind of know from just having a body yourself what that's like. There's a tension, there's a release of tension, there's a you know, those sorts of things. Hopefully that was somewhat useful. And you'll have to excuse the gloves as well. It's a bit cold today. I look like a rag and bone man or something, but whatever. I'm not here to be a princess, do you know what I mean? So, anyway, I hope that was somewhat useful, like I keep saying, and yeah, I'll see you next week. Please, 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 any recommendations for future topics, if you want me to try and, if you've got questions that you want me to answer about this video, sorry, I can answer in another video, that'd be great, anything like that. I feel like they will be more general going forward. But I want to try my hand at this a little bit. Anyway, I'm waffling on now. I'll see you next week, and thanks for watching. Cheers. Bye.